Okay, so what do you all already know about Ockegham so far?
Low parts.
Yes, low parts.
You wrote cool bass lines. For manly men.
Yes. You mentioned he probably did the 36 thing.
Which is really fun.
No, you can leave it open a little bit so people come on in.
Yes. So he did that. Do you know about when he was from? Yeah. Okay. That gives me an idea. All right, so on the front of your handout, there are a bunch of questions which I'm going to answer in this class. All right. Please take a handout. New handout?
We can share one.
Okay. That's all right. All right, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about Ockegham. But first, one more question. Do you know how we learn about the lives of period composers? Like, what is the main way we find out what they did?
Somebody complains about them. Somebody else talks about them, really.
No, not even that exciting. It's through payment records. Like, so we just look at what who the church paid to do what, or the kings and dukes, and that's how we piece together where they're at. And it's kind of interesting, it's like sometimes they're not in the records, but you can figure out that, he must have been there at this time because of assumptions that we make.
We
So
think that this name is the same as that other name that appeared in this other payment record.
Yeah,
years earlier.
and like the issue is sometimes people have the same name, and so Ockegham does not have that problem, as far as I know. Like, be sure that if they're mentioning him, it's him. So that's how we know things. So just about everything I'm going to say here is from payment records. So Ockegham was born in Saint-Gilles Lane near Mons. On the second page of your handout, I have a map, so you can see this is practically everywhere he went during his lifetime. He did at some point visit Spain for a while, probably on the King's business, which I'll get to. But that's where he went. So he's not the most well-traveled of musicians, but still pretty good. Still went more than, say, my family, which didn't travel more than 6 miles. So he was born in Saint-Gilles Lane near Mons. We know this because payment records in St. Martin de Tours, St. Martin in Gilles Lane, mentioned that Ockegham was a native there. But we don't know when he was born. It was somewhere between 1410 and 1430, which is a huge range for knowing. But pretty sure 1430 is too late. So we just pieced that together based on at this point he was already a accomplished musician, so he can be that young, etc. So between the ages of 7 and 15, he was probably a choir boy at one of the churches in Mons. So Saint-Gilles Lane on your map is, I have a little note, and it's right next to Mons. He could have been trained in Saint-Gilles Lane itself, but there was better musical training done in nearby Mons. And Binchois, another composer from Dufay's generation, there's a picture of Dufay and Binchois together, was an organist, I believe, in that area. So he may very well have taught Ockegham. And we know that Ockegham had a soft spot for Binchois. He wrote, I think, a declaration on Binchois. So there's a good chance that he was Ockegham's teacher. So his first documented musical activity was from 1443 in Our Lady of Antwerp, or Our Lady in Antwerp. And he was listed as a vicar chanteur, which implies that he was done with his training. So based on the dates for his age, if he was born in 1430, that would make him 13. So probably not then.
Finished his training.
Yes. And or if it is 1410, 33. So, and some sources say that it might have been even earlier than 1430. It might have been like 1405. We'll see. So, yeah, gives you an idea. But he wasn't very attached to Antwerp at all. He was there for about a year. Apparently, according to the church records, he didn't show up to Mass and stuff. And like a year or two later, he was working for the Duke of Bourbon in presumably in Moulins, because that's where the Duke's principal residence was. So Moulins, if you compare Antwerp and Moulins, they're not close together. So, yeah,
Get the hell out of town.
yeah, basically. And that's like the furthest south he went. So he worked there. He sang in the ducal chapel. And the first time he's mentioned, he's listed first among 7 singers. And the only people higher on the list were the premier chaplain, so the head chaplain, and the 3 priests. So he was already well-liked and well-accomplished and being recognized. And Ockegham has like the best life because it just continually grows in renown and respect and wealth. So if you want to be a period composer, this is a good one to be. So he started in the French court of Charles VII in 1451. And again, we know this through payment records. And as I said, during his time working there, his renown steadily increased. And to give you an idea of this, so he started in 1451, and in 1454, he gifted the king a book of music, and the king, in thanks, gave Ockegham 4 ells of scarlet cloth worth 44 livres. His annual salary was 180 livres. So he got a quarter of his salary in a gift. And later that year, he got his salary again as a gift, just because the king really liked him. And that year, so 3 years after he started, he became the premier chaplain of the King's Church. So in 1458, 7 years after he started working for the
Pardon
king.
me, which king was this?
King Charles VII.
Charles VII, okay.
Yes. Yeah, so I have in there, there's the 100 Years' War is still like finished. Well, it's just about done at this point. So
Got it.
anyway, 7 years after he started, he was appointed as the treasurer of St. Martin de Tours, which was a very, very lucrative position, and he held that through the rest of his life. So somewhere between 1463 and 1472, he became a priest, and it's unclear why he finally did it. So up until then, he didn't need to be a priest to be doing what he was doing. So it might have been so he could be chapel master of the main French church, which is usually a position given to priests. But until 1463, he was a subdeacon. So in 1470, he went on a trip to Spain. As I mentioned earlier, that's not on the map, but it's unclear why he went. It might have been that he was a counselor to the king, so he wasn't just the chapel musician, but also, a friend and counselor. And in 1484, he visited Bruges and Dam. It might have been on court business, or it might have been to visit Busnois, another composer of this generation. And he died in 1497. We know this because his successor for the treasurer of St. Martin de Tours was named then. But other than that, there's no official record of when he died. However, there are a lot of requiems and stuff on Ockegham. Yeah, so that's his life. So I don't write in here when he composed a certain piece, because we have a very hard time dating pieces from this time period, because all we have is a book of all of them put together, and there's no sense of date. We can try to stylistically figure it out, but especially when we talk about the masses, which is what we're going to focus on, everybody was writing different kinds of masses at the same time. So some of them are probably earlier, the mass form hadn't developed as much, but as today, when we write things in older styles, they weren't always writing the newest, latest, greatest thing. So yeah. So Ockegham was very well renowned during his lifetime. Composers certainly respected him and his work. In particular, in the 1470s, Francesco Florio wrote, "I am sure you could not dislike this man, so pleasing is the beauty of his person, so noble the sobriety of his speech, and of his morals, and his graciousness. He alone, of all the singers, is free from vice and abounding in all virtues." Tinctoris, a famous music theorist, praised Ockegham very highly, imitated his composition style, and praised Ockegham's fine bass voice, which we heard about earlier. So he was a bass singer, which might explain why he moved all, like, before Ockegham's time, the music was tended to be pitched higher. So, and Ockegham was like, no, we basses can sing low notes. So, let's see, Josquin, who Aaron will talk about in the next class, wrote a setting to Jean Molinet's poem, Nymphe de Bois, which was about the passing of Ockegham. And another way, even with not being so specific with people saying things about Ockegham, we know that he had influence at least into the next couple generations, because so many of his pieces were quoted or like taken, not just like, and his like techniques were used in their pieces. So, but then after that, in the 16th century, like mid to late 16th century, and until the 20th century, Ockegham's reputation really fell. The only thing, like, he was only discussed in scholarly theoretical circles, like how to compose music, and so people weren't hearing Ockegham and were assuming that his stuff was technically very interesting, but not musically any good. So
there used to be a saying among musicologists that medieval music should be seen and not heard.
Basically, I have a quote from an 18th century scholar who said, learning and labor seem to have preceded taste and invention. And another 18th century theorist claimed that piece by Ockegham was unsingable. And there's a great quote from the 1950s by Bukovser, who says, Ockegham renounces with amazing consistency all customary means of articulating a composition, cadences, profiled motives, symmetrical phrase structure, lucid interrelation of parts, imitation, sequences, prominence of one voice over others, and so forth. Of course, if you actually look at Ockegham's music, you see that that is not true. He does all of these things, but he got a bad reputation. I guess a little bit in the 19th century, like the Romantic era, people were saying that he was like mystically inspired, like you do. But I feel like now we're just like, we don't know how to, I don't know. I feel like now he's being better represented and appreciated for what he is. And I certainly think that if someone was so widely respected during his time, that there is something to be gained from learning his music.
Hundreds of years of composers were just preparing for Bach.
No, Bach
They didn't actually listen to any of this stuff themselves.
Yeah.
It was terrible music. They were just building up
Right.
for Bach to be able to exist.
True. Or, Bach came fully formed.
And actually, in the early 19th century, nobody even listened to Bach. Mendelssohn rediscovered Bach.
Yeah. Whee!
So I guess before that, it was preparing for Mozart and Haydn.
I guess. I'm sad. Okay. But I didn't know about any of these composers when I was taking piano lessons. It started with Bach, and then you go on. So there's all this keyboard music, and I'm not hearing about it. Okay, so now let's get to some music, actual music. So Ockeghem is most well known for his masses. He did write other things. He wrote motets, so I'll just briefly describe what they are. Motet is a polyphonic, so multiple voices singing different, sometimes the same text, but at different rhythms. So you can't necessarily understand what they're saying, but it sounds all puts together to create nice harmony. And for motets, they are religious in nature, usually. I think at this time they are religious in nature. He also wrote chansons, which were also, in this case, polyphonic pieces, which were secular in nature. And we are going to look at one of his chansons briefly because he quotes it verbatim is a bit strong, but pretty strongly in one of his masses. And then he did the Ordinary of the Mass. So the Ordinary of the Mass, for those who don't know, is, so in the Catholic Mass, there are parts of the service that are sung, and it's the same word, same text every time. So before the 15th century, where Ockegham is from, they would have a big book with all of the Kyries listed next to each other, all of the Sanctus, all of the credo and the Agnus Dei, and they would say, okay, which ones do I want to do this time? Flip this one, this one, this one, this one, this one. They weren't necessarily thematically bound. They were just like, we like these, we're going to put them together. One composer before the 15th century wrote a mass, that was Machaut, and we think that it's all one big piece, but he is the exception. And then in the 15th century, they were like, wouldn't it be nice if we could maybe put some of them together? Like we could have a set, say. And so they would start by like, well, we're going to maybe have the same melody on the top line, and we'll keep that in a few of them. And there was a few other iterations. I don't quite remember how they go. But ultimately, what people started doing was having a cantus firmus. So a cantus firmus is they take a chant melody, and then they put it usually in the tenor line, and then compose polyphony above and below it. And so that unifies the piece, but it's not quite as, punch you in the face. Like these are definitely related pieces, as if like they were all singing the same melody. So sometimes it can be hard to pick out the cantus firmus. Yes, and another reason that it's hard to pick it out is because they would lengthen the notes. So if you sing something very, very slowly, you can't remember what how those syllables go together to form words. And especially this is all very melismatic too, so you're not going to be able to pick it out from. If you look at your music, turn the page, double in, like the Kyrie, Kyrie, no, eleison, etc. Okay, so often they would take a chant, but the one I'm going to show you is the L'Homme Armé, which is, so L'Homme Armé is not a chant, it's a common, at the time, tune that was used very often as the basis for masses, but also it's just a fun tune. We don't know the origin of the tune. There are a number of possibilities. One is just a folk song that people liked. Another one of the composers, I think Busnois, was credited with writing it. But many, many masses were...
That's me.
Okay.
Getting ready to play your
Yay, great.
I turned mine off.
Oh, he's pairing with this guy.
So
Great.
The tune is in the tenor.
Yeah, the tune is in the tenor. So if you turn to page 3, you can see the Kyrie for the Missa L'Homme Armé. The Kyrie comes early in the Mass, and I think I'm mostly looking at Kyrie. I think, entirely Kyries in this class. So it's in the bottom, and you can read it and hear the tune. So L'Homme Armé goes... L'homme, l'homme, l'homme armé, l'homme armé, l'homme armé doit en douter, etc. I don't remember the rest of the French words. So you can see it in there. The first note is, there's a fourth. Dun, 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 dun. This one goes fast enough that if you listen, certainly if you sung it, you would know it. Listening to it's a little hard. So let's listen to some of Ockegham's L'Homme Armé Kyrie. There you go. So definitely singable, I would say. And hopefully you could hear the melody underneath.
It's really most clear in the third part, in the return to the Kyrie.
Yeah.
I think that really came out more there.
Yeah.
It's definitely more easier to pick up sometimes than others.
Yeah. I felt that the Christe part was also pretty good. So, yeah.
Yeah,
That's
but
the bridge.
it was easier to hear.
Yep. Also, I started singing it too. So that might have helped. Okay, so that's the first one we're going to look at. So many, many masses were written like that.
There's strawberries in orange.
There are. What did I say? Oh, right. So we have 13 full masses. Well, we have 13 masses from Ockegham, 10 all of the sections, and 3 of them do not have all of the sections. So there is all of the parts of the Kyrie. And also I should mention the source. So the main source we have for his music is the Chigi manuscript, which is available online, which is where I got these from. It's wonderful.
Public domain.
All public domain. You can get them from your house. You don't need to belong to a university. So it is not hard to find these days, which is wonderful. And it's a beautiful manuscript too, like you can tell. Okay, so the next one we're going to look at is the For Seulement Mass. So on page 4, we have some French words, which means that it's not a mass. This is his chanson. He wrote it separately, and then he decided to use it in his mass. So often when they would take from chansons, they would take like a line, a melody, or maybe they would use that as the cantus firmus like they did in the La Marmée Mass. But Ockegham went further than that and quoted quite a bit. So if you look on page 5, you can take out page 4 and page 5 and look at them next to each other. So the superius of the Kyrie is identical to the superius in the chanson. It can be a little bit hard to see because it's lengthened. Probably the I don't know. Yeah, probably the chanson, the editor. Yeah, so you can see on the left they have the incipit. Incipit is what is this part of it where they show a little bit of what it looked like in period. So they lengthened it here. So if they had not done that, then these would match up exactly. It's the same notes for that. So the top line matches it. The second line is the same but a fifth lower. So you have your A on the top, 5 down is D. And then that goes on. So they're in imitation, or canon, I guess, because it's the same. And then he not only does that, but he takes the contratenor of the chanson and he moves it a fifth lower and puts it in right there. So we're going to listen to a little bit of both, I hope. Did you manage to...
I have, those are the 2 Amazon ones.
Those are the 2 Amazon ones, yes. So I'm going to listen first to the, at least a little bit of the chanson. That's the 8-minute one. We're not going to listen to all 8 minutes. Okay, so you can listen.
The Bassus is
Yes. Because I didn't print out the whole piece. So yeah, you get the idea. This is a little bit confusing to follow since the middle line, I think, is higher than the top line. But also, you might have heard the bass is pretty rich and like it's got quite the range. What is it going from like an A, yeah, all the way up to an F? But, you know, our men can do it. Yeah. Do fives would have been like, I don't know, probably shifted up a fifth. At least that's the ones that we have done have been like that.
This
So
is a low bass line. It's a fairly high bass line.
yeah, but like for that time, yeah. Anyway, so let's listen to the Kyrie. So see if you can hear the melody. You should be able to. I don't have more of the music. So anyway, I could definitely hear the melody. I'm sure you could too. And it's, you know, it's much fuller than the other one because it's got 5 parts. So that's another thing they did with masses. So now we go on to the most exciting of the masses. Yes?
Everything else you need, you have in the fountain.
I believe so, yes. I should make sure this can connect to the thing. Hold on. Turning on Bluetooth will help. Come on, just go. Yes, good. Okay, so the Missa Prolationum. So I want you just to look at the 2 pages of the facsimile, and how many parts do you think this piece is, based on this? And I can show you. So the Kyrie part, Christe, Kyrie. So it's not like there's second explicit line on each page.
On the second page, there is a contrast. And yet 2 other mensurations.
Yes, you are onto something there. So take a guess. Well, I mean, it looks like 2 parts, right? Because you've got just 2 pages of music. But in fact, it is 4 parts, because this is a canon, and it's a mensural canon, which means that they're all singing at different rates. So now we have to go. So to really appreciate this piece, we have to talk a little bit about music theory from this time. So on page 9 of your handout, I have this page here that explains a little bit about those signs. So at the beginning, you see things that kind of look like time signatures, but look very strange. And they are all written at the bottom here. So what they thought about rhythm in terms of you have a big, long note, and you divided it in different ways. So you could divide it into 2. It should be imperfect. So da, da, da. You can divide it into 3. Da, da, or da, 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 da. And you could do that, at least in this music, you could do that like 2 levels down. So you see at the top we have the big notes. These are called breves. And they can be divided into either 3 or 2 semibreves. So if it's divided into 3 semibreves, it is perfect because 3 is perfect. The Holy Trinity. And imperfect is when it's in 2. And that's the tempus. And then the prolatio, from the prolationum of this Mass, it can be major or minor. So major being 3, so easy to remember because major is bigger, 3 is bigger than 2. Minor is 2. These days, everything is divided into 2. Sort of. You get 6/8 meter, and it's like, well, it's divided into 3, sort of. It's complicated. But we generally think of it, everything is being divided into 2, and then we have ways to make things to be into 3 otherwise. So what this means is you can have things like this canon. So let's look at page 6 of your piece. And so I've marked where the Kyrie 2 is. And so that one has an open circle and a C. And yes, so that one means that the tempus is perfect. The open circle is the tempus is perfect, and the C is the tempus is imperfect. But the others they're imperfect because a dot is perfect. Or the others are minor. So the next level down is minor. And so that one, if you look on so it's one more little bit of confusion. So one is on top of the other, but they aren't really the clef, saying where it goes on there. So the clef is the thing I have circled next to it, which is these the bars, and it's a C clef. So what that means is that in between the 2 little brackets, the line that's on, that's a middle C. And so for the top circle, middle C is on the second line from the bottom. And for the C, the middle C is on the bottom line of the piece. So in fact, the one on top, the circle, is the lower pitch-wise than the C, which is super confusing and had me spending like 5 minutes looking at my music being like, why doesn't this line up? Okay, so you can look at a modern edition of this on page 8, and that kind of shows you, at least we're going to look at the top 2 because the dot ones super confused me, and I was not able to really piece them together. But the top 2 are okay. So you see that the C mensuration has all half notes. Everything looks normal. And then on the circle, it's they're all dotted half notes. So they're 3/4 notes for each beat versus 2/4 notes. And it works out. So if you think about it, though, one is going faster than the other. The C mensuration is going faster, so it's going to have, they aren't going to end at the same time. So how do they account for this? How do they all have this nice liaison at the end? Well, if you look back on page 6, on the bottom line, there are these 3 dots. I have it circled, and that means that the circle mensuration is done there. That's where it has its liaison.
Just hold on that.
You don't even need to hold on it because they line up. You get there and you stop. You don't sing the rest of those notes. Those notes are not for you. But what's interesting is he manages to make a piece that is for 4 voices, all in different mensurations, using only 2 sets of notation, and it sounds good. And it's kind of amazing. So, also amazing, people could read this. And I think part of the reason why the the ones with the dots are more confusing is there are a lot of rules for imperfecting things, and I don't remember all of those rules. And so we're not going to get into that because that's an entirely different class.
Is there any clue that that the 2 in major prolation are a third apart? Oh yeah, okay,
yeah.
They're doing the same thing with the.
Mm-hmm. Yes, they are doing the same thing. Yes, yep.
Time signatures on different lines.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, yep.
We're just looking at the Kyrie 2.
Yep, we're just looking at the Kyrie too.
The other parts, the Kyrie 1 and the Christe start in unison?
Yes, they do. I didn't print those out because I thought it was more interesting to show the ones where they start differently. But yes, they do start on the same note. So
Would this have been a period when each part would be written out separately
no,
and not placed? Because
This
that's-
is what
no,
you read.
this is what you would read.
Yeah, no, it wouldn't.
Oh, sorry, but like, would they have part books? Like,
Well, or parts placed. My conductor did his doctorate on
Mhm.
medieval music, and the period that he studied, the parts were placed around, almost in a circle, and whatever part you stood at is the part that you sang.
Tuffle music.
Yeah.
okay. I don't know. And another thing is like they wouldn't have been reading off of this actually because this is a like beautiful book meant to be put on a coffee table and admired. So I don't think we really know what they played off of, or at least I don't know what they played off of. But I think they would have been looking at this notation at least. Like it wouldn't have been written out where they had just because it would be the same thing. Like they were used to reading, things that
My
are.
impression is that the Tuffle music was usually things aimed at amateurs jamming after dinner. We'll pull out the music and the violins and flutes and whatever, and just put it down on the table, and you sit there.
Oh, that music.
That's
Okay, from the
But everything
16th century.
Everything that he redid was a mass.
Okay.
And it was written. That's
And
the
it
way
was written in Tuffle
It was
music.
written in Tuffle.
Okay. Huh.
Yeah.
I'm used
Sorry.
to this sort of stuff being written cantus, tenor, altus, bassus, if there are 4 parts, but all facing the same direction.
No,
Yes.
these were-
Yeah.
Wouldn't
No.
they-
Give me your email. I'll send it to you.
Would they
Yeah.
have memorized this for performance, or would they be holding music with them in church?
Again, I don't know, but yeah, I don't know how they would have been doing it because we don't have like their actual what they practiced on. Because as I said, these are beautifully, richly illuminated manuscripts. Do you know?
There's some evidence. I don't actually know. I don't remember what I read or saw that they were working from those. They had practiced it a lot beforehand. So at that point, it was just like we use sheet music to kind of glance at it and be like, oh yeah. But they learned it and they had it on a big stand and then everybody stood around.
Oh, hey, yes. In
There's
fact,
pictorial evidence of a
right.
bunch of people standing looking at a
so on the first page of your manuscript, there's a little bit of that. So the bigger version of this has just this giant podium and Ockegham standing at the front, and there's a bunch of people crowding around it.
There are a couple of European music groups that do that today.
Yeah, and I've seen like the giant chant books that are like the size of this table practically that are up and everybody's looking at.
and with notes large enough that
Yeah.
people with failing eyesight
Right.
even in candlelight
Yes.
can see them from
Yes,
5 feet away.
right. So they did do that. But as far as like polyphony was very special. Vast majority of people never heard it. Only the very fancy churches had it. So like obviously the King of France would have his chapel singing polyphony. But yeah, so we don't know that much about that. Right. So let's listen to some of the Missa Prolationum, and we'll listen to the Kyrie. So we'll listen to the whole Kyrie, so you can follow along to the best of your ability with the original music here. Okay. So. Tionum.
This is starting from the first Kyrie.
First Kyrie. I mean, I could start on the third Kyrie, but we're doing okay on time. his duets. You can put them everywhere. Okay, so, well, actually, why don't I pause so people can get their music, so you can follow along on the modern edition, and it might be easier. Okay, so let's go. Or is it? There's still more. No, there's still more Christe. Apparently. Okay, now we have the Kyrie too.
This is something he doesn't do, isn't it?
I know. Doesn't do cadences. Yeah. Now, the one part being more important than the other, okay, maybe that's something he doesn't care about as much. Okay, so with that is all I have for my class. It is 10:50, so good timing on my part. On the first page, I have a bunch of questions, so I want to make sure that you have the answers to them. So, what voice part did Ockegham sing? Great. What form of music was Ockegham famous for? Masses, yes. Give 3 examples of how Ockegham was well respected during his lifetime.
He got extra money.
Yeah, he got lots of extra money.
And people imitated him.
Yeah, people imitated him, and I guess another thing is,
People criticized him.
well, that's way after his lifetime.
People eulogized him.
Yeah, people eulogize. That was the other thing that I was.
No, My understanding is that almost all musicians lived largely on tips and special prezzies after a performance, but they had salaries too.
Yes. So he had a salary and then some. He had quite the...
Bonus.
Yes. So how was Ockegham regarded from the 16th to the 19th century? Yes.
Not so well.
Not so well.
I was answering the wrong question, I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. What was the ordinary of the Mass? So that's... Yeah, Kyrie, all of those things. The bits of the Mass that are the same in every time. And so how is it treated differently in the 15th century than in previous centuries? Well,
That polyphony.
yeah. So in previous centuries, they were done... so now they are thematically linked. Before it was just, we're going to write a Kyrie today.
And frequently thematically linked by a pop tune,
Yes.
especially in the 15th century.
Yes. Oh, I forgot to mention with the Prolationum that, as you might have guessed, is newly composed. He did not take that from anything else. It's just in this Mass. Let's see. So what is a cantus firmus? It's the pop tune at the bottom that unified everything. Or chant, as was probably more common. So a mensural canon, that's what the Prolationum was. It's where you can get multiple parts with one piece of music, and the difference is the different time signatures at the front make it a canon.
Chiconia did at least one of those 50 years earlier.
Yeah, and Dufay has mensural canons too. We were going to do one last year, but didn't quite get it together.
The one I'm thinking of, Chiconia, has 3 parts in speed ratios of 1 to 3 to 4.
Yeah.
The 1 against the 3 is easy, and the 1 against the 4 is easy. The 3 and the 4 have to completely ignore one another.
Yeah. Okay, and then what is special about the Missa Prolationum? That was the one that he took from his chanson.
And he took several parts of it.
Yeah, he took several parts of it. That's what's special about it. He didn't just take a melody. He took multiple lines and quoted them directly, like not even really changing them much. The top line is complete, and like the others, he just shifted them over. Yep, and then he's put in some more lines that are newly composed for the piece. Okay, that's what I had. Yay! You're welcome. Feel free to keep the stuff.
And this is truly a picture of Ockegham.
We are pretty sure that it is. It's not explicitly labeled as him. It's, I think, just like labeled as a musician, but scholars believe that that's Ockegham. And he kind of looks like the guy right there. So, although there it's like they mentioned that Ockegham is in the picture, but like at least in the book that I was using for this, they didn't explicitly say which one he was. He's like in the foreground. There were a few in the foreground.
By the time he died, individual portraiture was very much a thing.
Yeah.
So.
And my sources for this. So one source is Atlas's book on Renaissance music, which we have a copy of here. And then the New Grove has a nice article, which I got a lot of this from. And then the facsimiles are from the Chigi Codex, and the modern editions are from the companion to the Atlas book on Renaissance music. So, good stuff. Yay. Okay. You're welcome.